The plasma torch died with a wheeze, leaving Marcus Torres in the kind of silence that only came at 3 in the morning in Neo-Seattle's forgotten industrial quarter. He pulled off his welding mask and wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a clean streak through the grime. The hoverbike's engine housing gleamed under his workshop lights. Finally, whole again, after 6 hours of patient reconstruction, Marcus stretched his back and surveyed his domain. Torres Salvage and Repair occupied a converted shipping container. In the shadow of the old space elevator, surrounded by towers of scrap metal that caught the city's neon glow like broken mirrors, most people saw junk. Marcus saw potential waiting for the right hands to unlock it. A soft scraping sound made him pause. Not unusual, rats. Wind, settling metal. But this sound had rhythm, purpose. Marcus grabbed a portable light and stepped outside into the drizzle that never quite stopped falling in this part of the city. "Hello?" His voice echoed off the metal walls of his compound. Shops closed. The scraping stopped, then resumed. More carefully now, Marcus followed the sound to his parts bin, a massive container where he sorted salvageable components. The lid was cracked open just enough for something small to slip inside. He approached slowly, remembering. The last time he'd surprised a desperate scavenger, the kid had nearly taken his eye out with a shard of glass. "Look, I get it," he said softly. "You need something. But stealing from me just means I can't help the next person who needs it." Head popped up from the bin, definitely not human. Pale blue skin stretched over delicate features, with large dark eyes that seemed to catch and hold every photon of light. Silver hair fell in tangled sheets around narrow shoulders. The being couldn't have been more than 12 years old by human standards, but Marcus had learned not to assume age with alien species. They stared at each other. The child's hands clutched something against her chest, a corroded power cell that Marcus had marked for recycling. "I can pay," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that suggested vocal cords designed for different frequencies. "Have this?" She held up a small crystal that pulsed with internal light. Marcus recognized Zephyrian biotech when he saw it. The crystal was worth more than his entire month's earnings, but something in the child's desperate posture stopped him from pointing that out. "Keep your crystal," he said instead. "The power cell's yours. But I'm curious, what's a Zephyrian kid doing in my scrapyard at 3 a.m.? Her grip on the crystal tightened. "You know my people? Worked on Zephyrian ships before I came planetside. Good engineering. Built to last." Marcus kept his voice steady, non-threatening. "You got a name?" "Nix," she said after a moment's hesitation. "Marcus and Nix. That power cell you're holding is dead. Whatever you're trying to fix, it won't work with that one." Her face fell, hope crumbling into despair. "But it was the only one small enough. My mama's breathing unit needs power, and the big human cells don't fit the interface." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He'd seen that look before in the mirror years ago, when the doctors told him there was nothing more they could do for his own mother. "Bring me to your mama," he said. "Let me see what I'm working with." Nix's eyes widened. "You would help?" "Even though I am not human. Kid, I've fixed ships from 12 different species. Biology's irrelevant when someone needs help." Marcus grabbed his toolkit and a selection of compatible power cells. "Besides, your people make some of the most elegant tech in the galaxy. I'd be honored to work on Zephyrian equipment." For the first time since he'd found her, Nix smiled. It transformed. Her entire face, revealing a beauty that was alien but unmistakably young and hopeful. "My mama will want to thank you properly," she said, tucking the crystal away. "She says humans helped our people once, long ago. She believes in paying debts." Marcus shouldered his kit, feeling the familiar satisfaction that came with a problem he could actually solve. "Let's go fix your mama's breathing first. We can talk about debts later." As they walked into the neon-painted darkness, neither of them noticed the corporate surveillance drone that detached itself from a nearby tower and began following at a discreet distance. Nix led Marcus through a maze of abandoned transit tunnels beneath the old financial district. The passages reeked of rust and ozone, lit only by emergency strips that flickered like dying stars. Marcus had lived in Neo-Seattle for 8 years, and never knew these tunnels existed. "The corporation men don't come down here," Nix explained, her voice echoing off curved walls. "Too much interference from the old maglev lines. Their scanning equipment gets confused." Marcus adjusted his grip on the toolkit. "What corporation men?" Nix glanced back at him, those large dark eyes reflecting the tunnel lights. "The ones who hunt refugees. They say we carry diseases, that we steal jobs from humans. But really, they want our biotech. They capture families and make them work in their labs until—" She didn't finish. They descended deeper. Past levels that predated the space elevator, past forgotten maintenance shafts, and flooded storage areas. Finally, Nick stopped at a door marked with symbols that seemed to shift in Marcus's peripheral. Visions, Spherian script that his brain couldn't quite process. "Mama," Nix called softly. "I brought help." The door opened to reveal a space that defied the tunnel's industrial grimness. Bioluminescent panels cast gentle blue light across walls covered in what looked like living tapestries, plants, or fungus, that pulsed with their own inner rhythm. The air was warm, humid, charged with an energy that made Marcus's skin tingle. And there was the woman. Marcus had worked with Zephyrian males on the ship crews, tall, angular, built for zero-G efficiency. This woman was something else entirely. She stood maybe 5'6", with the same pale blue skin as her daughter, but marked with silver patterns that traced elegant lines from her temples to her collarbone. Her hair was darker than Nix's, almost black with threads of silver, and her eyes, Her eyes held depths that spoke of star charts and quantum mathematics, of losses that had worn her soul smooth like stones in a river. "You brought a human," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that vibrated in Marcus's chest. She wasn't angry, just stating a fact. "Mama, this is Marcus. He fixes things. Good things. He knows our people's work." Nix held up the dead power. "Cell, he says he can make your breathing unit work again." The woman Vera, Nix whispered her name, studied Marcus with an intensity that felt like being scanned by ship's sensors. She was beautiful in a way that made his mouth go dry, but more than that, she radiated a competence that reminded him of the best engineers he'd served with. "I am Vera Blackwood," she said finally. "I apologize for my daughter's enthusiasm. We have learned to be cautious with your species." Marcus noticed the way she held herself, favoring her left side slightly. The breathing unit hung from her shoulder, elegant Zephyrian biotech fused with crude human modifications. Someone had tried to repair it with Earth components, but the interface was failing. "No apology needed," Marcus said. "Your daughter was trying to save your life. That's worth some broken protocol." Vera's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You speak as someone who understands duty. I understand what it's like to watch someone you love struggle to breathe." Marcus set down his kit and gestured toward the unit. "May I?" Vera hesitated, then carefully removed the device. This close, Marcus could see the elegant beauty of the original design biomechanical interfaces that would adapt to the user's physiology, powered by cells that converted ambient energy into breathable atmosphere supplements. "Zephyrian engineering," he murmured, running his fingers along the connections. "This is museum-quality work. Why do you need atmospheric assistance? Your people breathe oxygen like us." "Because I am not entirely Zephyrian," Vera said quietly. "My mother was human. It's a mixing of our genetics, sometimes creates ... complications. My lungs process oxygen at only 60% efficiency. Without the unit, I have perhaps 2 days." Marcus looked up sharply. "You're half human." It was not uncommon during the Alliance years, before the war, before the persecution began. Vera's hand found Nix's shoulder. "My daughter is 3/4 Zephyrian, but she inherited my lung condition. She will need a unit too, in time." The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a familiar tool harness. 2 lives, depending on technology he could fix. Simple math, really. "I can rebuild the interface," he said, pulling components from his kit. "But I need to. Understand why come to Earth? Why not go to a Zephyrian medical facility?" Vera's laugh held no humor. Because there are no Zephyrian medical facilities, Marcus Torres. The war ended our civilization. Those of us who survived scatter like seeds on the solar wind, hoping to find soil where we can grow new roots. She moved to a wall panel that bloomed open at her touch, revealing a view screen that showed grainy footage of corporate security forces raiding refugee camps. They hunt us, she continued. Not for crimes, but for our biology. Zephyrian neural interfaces, our biotech, our ability to commune with living systems. They want to harvest these gifts and sell them to the highest bidder. Marcus worked while she spoke, his hands moving automatically through familiar motions. While his mind processed the implications, he'd served on ships during the final years of the war, had seen the aftermath of battles where entire worlds went dark. He just never connected it to the quiet desperation of refugees hiding in tunnel systems beneath his own city. There, he said, reconnecting the final interface. Try that. Vera slipped the unit back on, and immediately her breathing deepened, became easier. Color returned to her cheeks, and the silver patterns on her skin brightened slightly.
How long?
Will it last? She asked. With proper maintenance? Years, but Vera, ... Marcus packed his tools carefully. I need to ask you something. And I need you to know I'm asking as someone who's been alone for a long time, not as someone trying to take advantage. Vera tilted her head, waiting. My workshop is warm, defensible, and has clean power. I've got space, food, and more repair work than I can handle alone. Marcus met her eyes. I could use a partner who understands advanced biotech. And Nyx could use a place where she doesn't have to scavenge power cells in the middle of the night. The silence stretched between them. It's filled with the hum of bioluminescent panels and the distant rumble of city infrastructure. Finally, Nyx spoke up. Mama, he fixed you. And he didn't ask for anything first. Vera studied Marcus again. But this time, her gaze felt less like a security scan and more like a woman measuring a man's character. One night, she said, as a trial, you proved trustworthy. We discussed permanent arrangements. Marcus nodded. Fair enough, but Vera, if you decide to stay, I want you to know, I'm not looking for charity cases or employees. I'm looking for family. The word hung in the air between them, carrying weight that none of them were quite ready to examine. Detective Jin Nakamura stood in the rain outside Torres Salvage, watching surveillance footage on her wrist display while water dripped from the brim of her cap. 3 hours ago, a corporate drone had flagged unusual biosignatures in this sector. 2 hours ago, that same drone had gone offline near this exact location. Jin was good at her job because she understood the spaces between official policy and human decency. Half human herself, her father Japanese, her mother from the Kepler colony she'd learned early that sometimes you had to choose which part of your heritage to honor in any given moment. The salvage yard was quiet except for the hum of generators and the occasional clank of settling metal. Jin could have called for backup, could have brought a full tactical team to sweep the area for illegal aliens. Instead, she knocked on the workshop door. Marcus Torres answered, looking exactly like his file photo mid-30s, competent hands, the kind of steady eyes that came from years of fixing problems rather than creating them. What the file didn't mention was the way he positioned himself in the doorway, blocking her view of the interior while appearing casual about it. Help you, officer? Detective Nakamura, NSPD? Jin showed her badge, but didn't push forward. Had reports of suspicious activity in this area. Mind if I take a look around? Depends what kind of suspicious activity. Marcus crossed his arms. I run a legitimate salvage operation. All my permits are current. Jin heard it then, a soft sound from deeper in the workshop. Musical. Definitely not human. She met Marcus's eyes and saw him realize she'd heard it too. To Torres, she said quietly, I need you to understand something. I'm here alone on the night shift, following up on a routine sweep. What I put in my report depends entirely on what I find. Marcus studied her face. And what are you hoping to find, detective? A citizen conducting legal business in his own workspace? Jin glanced at the surveillance camera mounted on the corner of his building, whose security system may have malfunctioned. During a power surge, explaining why my department's monitoring equipment went offline. Understanding passed between them, like a circuit closing. "Come in," Marcus said, stepping aside. "But wipe your feet. I just cleaned the floors." The workshop was exactly what Jin expected to organize chaos. Every tool in its place, works in progress arranged with the logic of someone who understood complex systems. What she didn't expect was the woman. Vera Blackwood sat at a workbench, her pale blue hands dancing over the components of what looked like a quantum processor. She'd clearly heard the conversation at the door, but continued working, her movements precise and confident. Beside her, a young girl with similar features watched Jin with eyes that held too much wariness for her apparent age. "Detective Nakamura," Marcus said, "meet my new business partners. Vera's helping me upgrade my quantum diagnostic systems. Her daughter Nix is learning the trade." Jin nodded slowly. The story was thin, but it would hold under casual scrutiny. More importantly, it was the kind of story that left room for everyone to maintain dignity. "Quantum diagnostics," she said. "Specialized work. You're lucky to find someone with those skills." "Very lucky," Marcus agreed. Vera looked up from her work, meeting Jin's gaze directly. "Detective, is there a specific violation you're investigating?" The question was perfectly reasonable, but something in Vera's tone suggested she was prepared for the answer to be yes. Jin had seen that same readiness in her mother's posture during colony. "Security checks the careful balance between cooperation and defiance. No specific violations," Jin said. "Just following up on some equipment malfunctions in the area. Interference from the old maglev lines, most likely." Vera's hands stilled on the processor. "Yes, those old systems can create quite a bit of electromagnetic noise, very disruptive to modern scanning equipment." The women looked at each other across the workbench, each recognizing something in the other that had nothing to do with species, and everything to do with the particular challenges of existing in spaces where you didn't quite fit the expected categories. "Well," Jin said finally, "everything here looks to be in order, Mr. Torres. I'll note in my report that your operation is fully compliant with current regulations." "Appreciated, Detective." Jin headed for the door, then paused. "Wait, one more thing. There's been some corporate interest in this sector lately. Automated surveillance, that sort of thing. You might want to upgrade your security systems. Make sure they're resistant to electromagnetic interference." Marcus nodded gravely. "I'll look into that." At the door, Jin stopped again. "Miss Blackwood, that quantum processor you're working on us, that Zephyrian tech?" Vera's posture went rigid, but her voice remained steady. "I'm familiar with various technical standards, Detective." "Impressive. Zephyrian engineering is supposed to be remarkably elegant, adaptive, responsive to the user's needs." Jin pulled a business card from her pocket and set it on the nearest workbench. "If you ever need consultation on technical standards or regulatory compliance, feel free to call. I have contacts throughout the city who appreciate quality work." After Jin left, the workshop fell silent except for the hum of equipment and the rain on the metal roof. "What just happened?" Nix whispered. "Shh, politics," Vera said, but her voice carried a note of surprised hope. The most elegant kind. "It's..." Picked up the detective's card, noting the personal contact information written on the back in neat handwriting. "Looks like we might have more allies than we thought." Outside, Jin sat in her patrol car and composed her report. "Equipment malfunction due to electromagnetic interference. No anomalous activity detected. Routine. Routine patrol schedule. Sufficient for this sector." Then she opened a different file, one that officially didn't exist, and added 3 names to a list of people who might need unofficial protection in the coming weeks. The list was getting longer, but Jin had learned that sometimes the most important police work happened in the spaces between the official policies. Her CUM unit buzzed with another suspicious activity report, this one from the waterfront district. Jin started her car and drove through the neon-painted night. Carrying the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new choices between the letter of the law and the spirit of justice. 3 weeks after Jin's visit, Marcus woke to the sound of hover engines outside his workshop. Too many hover engines? He rolled off his cot and checked the security display. 6 corporate vehicles arranged in a perfect perimeter around his compound. Vera, he whispered urgently. We've got company. She was already awake, had probably been listening to the approaching engines for minutes before they'd become visible. Vera moved with liquid efficiency, gathering essential tools and data storage units, while Nyx rubbed sleep from her eyes. Corporate security? Vera asked. Looks like... Marcus pulled on his boots and checked the hidden panel where he kept his father's old service weapon. How fast can you move? As fast as necessary. Vera's voice carried the calm of someone who'd lived through this scenario before. But Marcus, if we run now, they'll know you were harboring fugitives. Your life here will be over. Marcus met her eyes. Maybe it's time for a new life anyway. Before Vera could respond, a voice echoed from the compound speaker system. Marcus Torres. This is Director Callahan, Nexus Corporation's Security Division. We have a warrant to search these premises for stolen biotechnology and illegal alien refugees. Please open your primary access door. Marcus activated the workshop's external cameras. 6 vehicles, at least 20 personnel in corporate security gear. Professional, methodical, expensive. This wasn't a fishing expedition. They knew exactly what they were looking for. How did they find us? Nyx whispered. Maybe they didn't, Marcus said, studying the display. Maybe they're just following leads. A new voice came over the female. Familiar. Mr. Torres, this is Detective Nakamura. I'm here as an NSPD observer to ensure this search complies with city regulations. Could you open the door, please? We'd like to get this resolved quickly. Marcus and Vera exchanged glances. Jin's presence could be coincidence, or it could be salvation. Either way, running was no longer an option. Stay calm, Marcus, told Nyx. Let me handle this. He opened the door to find Director Callahan, a man whose expensive suit couldn't quite hide the military, bearing underneath, flanked by 4 security operatives in tactical gear. Jin stood slightly apart from the corporate team, her position suggesting professional cooperation rather than enthusiastic partnership. Mr. Torres, Callahan said, without preamble, we have reliable intelligence that you're harboring Zephyrian refugees in violation of Terra Security Protocol 7 Alpha. We also have reason to believe said refugees are in possession of stolen biotechnology worth several million credits. That's a serious accusation, Marcus replied evenly. I assume you have documentation to support it? Callahan produced a datapad displaying search warrants, federal authority codes, and what looked like surveillance footage from the night Jin had visited the workshop. Surveillance shows non-human biosignatures detected at this location 18 days ago, Callahan continued. Corporate property, in the form of adaptive atmospheric processors, has gone missing from several refugee processing centers. The timing aligns perfectly with the signatures detected here. Jin stepped forward. Mr. Torres, for the record, I need to ask, are you currently harboring any non-human persons on these premises? The question was carefully phrased, giving Marcus room to maneuver while establishing Jin's official position. Marcus appreciated the professionalism, even as he felt the weight of decisions settling on his shoulders. Detective, I'm currently working with technical consultants on quantum diagnostic systems. Their species is irrelevant to their professional qualifications. Technical consultants, Callahan said with barely concealed irritation. Mr. Torres, if these individuals are legally documented contractors, you'll have no objection to us verifying their status? None at all, Marcus said. As long as the verification process respects their professional dignity and personal safety. Callahan's expression suggested he found Marcus's conditions amusing. Mr. Torres, these aren't persons with rights to dignity. They're classified as displaced enemy combatants under the Zephyrian War Crimes Resolution. They have no legal standing on Earth. Director Callahan Jin interjected smoothly. That classification applies only to individuals who actively participated in combat operations against Terra forces. Civilian refugees, especially those with mixed heritage, fall under different protocols. Detective with respect. Corporate security protocols supersede local law enforcement in matters of interstellar fugitive recovery. With respect, Director, not when those fugitives are inside Neo-Seattle city limits. Local jurisdiction applies until federal courts rule otherwise. Marcus watched the power dynamic shift as Jin positioned herself legally between the corporate team and his workshop. He'd seen enough military standoffs to recognize the moment when competing authorities had to choose between escalation and negotiation. Perhaps, he said carefully, we could all step inside and handle this professionally. My consultants can present their documentation, you can verify their status, and we can resolve this without anyone feeling like their authority has been challenged. Callahan considered the offer, clearly weighing the benefits of quick resolution against his obvious preference for dramatic enforcement. Finally, he nodded. 5 minutes, Mr. Torres? But if your consultants attempt to flee or resist verification, this becomes a fugitive recovery operation. They entered the workshop to find Vera and Nix waiting at the central workbench. Vera had arranged their documentation with the precision of someone who'd faced official scrutiny before identity matrices. Technical certifications, work visa applications still pending processing. Everything legal, everything documented. Everything positioned to suggest legitimate business rather than desperate refuge. But what stopped the entire corporate team in their tracks was the quantum processor humming quietly on the workbench. Clearly Zephyrian biotech, clearly operational, and clearly worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Interesting, Callahan murmured, approaching the device with the reverence of someone who understood its value. Functional quantum bioprocessing with adaptive neural interfaces. This technology is classified as strategic military hardware. This technology, Vera said, her voice carrying the authority of absolute expertise, is my personal design, created using materials and knowledge brought with me to Earth. It represents no theft of corporate property and violates no terra security protocols. Callahan looked up sharply. Your design? My name is Vera Blackwood. I hold advanced degrees in quantum bioengineering from the Zephyrian Technical Institute and provisional certification from Terra Advanced Technologies. Before the war, I worked for Nexus Corporation as a senior development consultant. You'd like to verify my employment records? Silence stretched like a taut cable. Marcus watched Callahan's expression shift from predatory confidence to professional uncertainty. You worked for Nexus? For 3 years, developing the atmospheric processing systems your security team believes have been stolen. Vera's smile held no warmth. Director Callahan, I didn't steal Nexus technology. I invented it. Jin stepped forward, her own data. Pad displaying employment verification records that looked remarkably thorough for something assembled in 3 weeks. Director, it appears Ms. Blackwood's credentials are legitimate. As a former Nexus employee, she would have legal right to develop improvements on her own prior work, particularly when that work was performed under standard intellectual property agreements. Callahan stared at the quantum processor clearly, recalculating the entire situation. Ms. Blackwood, if you're who you claim to be, why are you living in a salvage workshop instead of working in a proper laboratory? Because proper laboratories belong to corporations that classify my people as enemy combatants, Vera replied calmly. Because the same company that once paid for my expertise now hunts my daughter through tunnels beneath the city. Because sometimes, Director, the most advanced technology develops in the most unlikely places. Marcus watched the corporate security team exchange glances, their confidence eroding as the legal ground shifted beneath them. Whatever intelligence had led them here, it hadn't prepared them for a target who could match their authority with credentials and expertise. One more question, Ms. Blackwood, Callahan said finally. The atmospheric processors that went missing from our facilities, did you take them? I took nothing, Director. But if refugees in your processing centers suddenly found that their atmospheric support systems worked more efficiently, experienced fewer failures, and required less maintenance? Double quotes. Vera shrugged elegantly. Perhaps they simply benefited from original design specifications that prioritized function over planned obsolescence. The implication hung in the air like a challenge. Vera hadn't stolen the processors, she'd remotely upgraded them, using her own original code to improve systems that her former employer had deliberately degraded to ensure ongoing revenue streams. Jin closed her datapad with a soft click. Director Callahan, Unless you have evidence of actual theft or vandalism, it appears this is a civil intellectual property matter rather than a criminal fugitive recovery operation. Callahan looked around the workshop one more time, his gaze lingering on the quantum processor, the organized tools, the obvious evidence of productive technical work. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Ms. Blackwood, Nexus Corporation will be reviewing you." 6 months later, Torres Advanced Biosystems occupied 3 converted shipping containers in Neo-Seattle's revitalized industrial district. The sign outside was modest, but the work happening inside was anything but. Marcus stood at the main workbench, watching Vera calibrate a neural interface that would allow paraplegic patients to control prosthetic limbs with their thoughts. Her hands moved with the precision of someone born to work with technology that bridged the gap between biology and engineering. "Sensitivity range looks good," he said, monitoring the diagnostic displays. "But the response time on complex motor commands is still lagging by about 12 milliseconds. 12.3, Vera corrected without looking up. "It's not a lag. It's a safety buffer. The interface needs time to distinguish between intentional commands and involuntary neural noise." Marcus grinned. 6 months of working together had taught him to trust Vera's instincts about biotech, while she'd learned to appreciate his mechanical engineering perspective. Their collaborative approach produced devices that neither could have designed alone. "Mama, Jin's here," Nix called from the front office, where she managed appointment scheduling with the serious efficiency of someone who'd learned early that organization could mean the difference between safety and danger. Detective Jin Nakamura entered the workshop looking pleased with herself, carrying a datapad and a bottle of what Marcus hoped was genuine sake. "Good news," she announced. "The Terra Advanced Technologies Review Board just approved your provisional manufacturing license. You're officially authorized to produce and sell adaptive biomedical devices throughout the Terra system." Vera set down her tools, a smile transforming her face. "All of them. Atmospheric processors, neural interfaces, biodiagnostic systems, even the quantum medical scanners." Jin set the datapad on the workbench. "Nexus Corporation's challenge to your intellectual property rights was dismissed with prejudice. Apparently their lawyers couldn't argue that you'd stolen your own research." Marcus felt a weight he'd been carrying for months finally lift from his shoulders. Legal recognition meant more than just business opportunities. It meant legitimacy. It's protection, the right to exist without constantly looking over their shoulders. "There's more," Jin continued. "The city council approved the refugee assistance program we discussed. 23 Zephyrian families currently hiding in the tunnel systems can now apply for temporary residence permits while their asylum cases are processed." Nix looked up from her scheduling tablet. "Will they have places to live?" "That's the really good news," Marcus said. "Torres Advanced Biosystems just got a very large contract to provide medical equipment for the new refugee settlement." "Need to hire additional staff?" Vera raised an eyebrow. "Additional staff with very specific technical qualifications?" "Exactly the kind of qualifications that Zephyrian refugees with advanced degrees might possess," Jin said with satisfaction. "It's amazing how these things work out." Through the workshop's windows, Marcus could see the city's skyline changing as old industrial spaces transformed into mixed-use developments. The refugee settlement would occupy converted warehouses near the harbor, close enough to the workshop that families could walk to work far enough from corporate districts to maintain a degree of independence. Marcus, Vera said quietly, "When Nix first brought you to the tunnels, I thought you were offering charity." "I didn't understand that. You were offering partnership." "I didn't understand it either," Marcus admitted. "I just knew I wanted to fix something that was broken." "Okay, now." Marcus looked around the workshop hat, the advanced medical devices they'd created together, at the appointment calendar full of patients whose lives would be improved by their work, at Nix growing into a brilliant young engineer who could navigate both human and Zephyrian technical standards. "Now I think maybe we fixed each other." Vera stepped closer, her silver-marked skin catching the workshop's lights. "Marcus Torres, I have a proposition for you. Another business proposal. A personal one." Vera's smile held the kind of warmth that had been absent during those first cautious weeks. "My daughter believes you would make an excellent husband for her mother. She's been remarkably persistent about this assessment. Marcus felt his heart skip, then settle into a rhythm that felt like coming home. What does her mother think? Her mother thinks, Vera said, reaching for his hands. Some of the best engineering happens when two different systems learn to work together so seamlessly that they become something entirely new. Jin cleared her throat pointedly. Should I leave you two alone to discuss technical specifications? Stay, Nick said firmly. Your family too. And someone needs to help me plan a wedding that works for both human and Zephyrian traditions. Marcus looked at the woman whose daughter had offered her to a stranger in a tunnel, who'd trusted him with her life and her work and her hopes for a future that seemed impossible 6 months ago. Vera Blackwood, he said formally. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife and business partner in all future endeavors, both technical and personal? Yes, she said, and kissed him while quantum processors hummed in biointerfaces. Calibrated, and the city outside their windows grew a little brighter. 3 months later, Torres Blackwood Advanced Biosystems hosted its first wedding in the main workshop, officiated by Detective Jin Nakamura in her capacity as a licensed civil celebrant. The guest list included 23 Zephyrian families, a dozen human neighbors, several Terra legal aid attorneys, and one very satisfied 12-year-old girl who had successfully engineered the most complex matchmaking project in recent interspecies history. The quantum processors hummed the wedding march in harmonics that made the bioluminescent decorations pulse in rhythm, and rain fell gently on the roof while inside. Two species learned new ways to build families from the salvaged pieces of their separate worlds,